money to pay those.
No, there's no money set aside to pay that.
But it's
But
in
we
the,
spent,
Yes, but it's in that budget.
it's in the budget.
right, but we've already spent the money that we received.
Yes. So we have to wait till our
Have we
taxes.
gotten the bills?
Taxes
No,
and
no,
stuff.
No, not the
No,
taxes,
no, no, no,
those
no, no.
bills.
Well,
I just wanna make sure.
They're
that-
still
We
working the
received,
bill.
we received one bill. I thought we would have
But
one.
is Irwin in there?
I don't
It
know.
might have been.
Let me see.
We paid them $172,000 last month, and they have to submit their bill every month right before a board meeting. So I don't remember seeing it in there. and I-
You have pay request.
I didn't see it.
They
It's
have
not
to-
in there, so
They have to have
it
pay
didn't make
request,
it.
you don't say with the architect and all that.
Yeah, they do a pay request, and they're supposed to get it to us about a week before the
Week
board
before
meeting.
it
So-
was
Or they
maybe it
get-
didn't make it in time.
To get for the.
And we figured we owe them, we'll get a little bit more interest back, we think, after this cold thing, that they wouldn't pay us for until it's done, but it's $818,000, somewhere around there is what we still owe them, but we still should get a little bit more from the insurance, so. 200,000, so we're probably on the hook for around 600, but we put the full 18, or 818 in the budget, so that's in that budget we talked about.
One more question about the budget I have. You know, we negotiated with Clearway when they came in here, is all the numbers and everything coming out according to what they agreed to?
Oh, yeah, I think we're very satisfied
Is
with
this
that.
the last of the Frontier that's in this?
It'll
It's
go
gonna-
on for.
It's gonna trickle out, yeah, there's a,
There's a certain contract.
there's, yeah, we've got a contract on one line at Unity that runs out in 19, and we can't get out of it because it was a construction build.
That's what I was wondering, it
Yeah.
shows $1,221.
Yeah, we can't get out of it,
Really?
we'd have to pay it out, so, yeah.
We're still running cheaper than what we would with all the other.
Yeah, even with that deficit, it's still cheaper than what it was before,
And
so.
better
Get
ser-
cheaper as we
and-
go for a
Yep.
while.
And better service.
Yeah, better service, it's still cheaper, even when that, and the kind of the positive is when that Unity thing runs out, there's more money that's, that we're not having to come up with. I think it's November of 19 when that officially runs out, so,
And if you just think of the variables you eliminated there.
yeah.
We're constantly trying to eliminate variables, especially when you're troubleshooting a system like that. Eliminate, I don't know how many different service providers we eliminated.
Yeah, we had, I think 8 we had at least,
Not bad.
and we went to 1.
Yeah.
And that was, and that was across the board with internet, phone, and we had a separate long distance service too. Well, now it's all rolled into one, so.
Save many man,
Make your job easy.
it'll save many man
A little bit.
hours, that can be devoted to something else, so.
All right, we don't have any more discussion, if not, do I have a motion to accept the minutes, bills, and treasury report?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Lisa, roll call please.
Mr. Berger.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Sanders.
Yes. All right, we're gonna go into executive session at this time. Need a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make that.
You gotta read, you gotta read that first. Need a motion.
Executive session, closed session, to consider information on the employment or discussion
Thank you very
of
much.
specific employees or officers, a collective negotiating matters between employers and their employees or representatives, to discuss litigation, probable imminent, pending, or file, and conduct a student expulsion hearing. Motion.
I'll make that motion.
Any second?
I'll second.
Discussion? Linda, Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger. Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
If you take them out, and you can go through this a little bit in more detail on your own, if you take that population completely out, which I know the state doesn't, but if you want to truly get a good clear picture of our special needs population, we are really at 13% with disabilities. And right now, I always look at, and it goes into a little bit more detail here, I look at our environment that we are educating them in. We always want to try to serve them in the least restrictive environment. That goes along with the federal and state regulations. We're doing a great job of that. Right now, we have 55% of our students in the absolute least restrictive environment, which is we are serving them in the regular education classroom 80% or more of the day. we move into what is called, referred to as, for us, Code 2. They're inside the regular ed classroom. 40 to 79% of the day, 26 of our population is there. And then the most supportive environment means that they are in the regular ed classroom only 40% of the day. But still yet, that's only 19%. So we're doing great. Our staff is excellent at making sure the children get what they need. We're meeting those needs, and we're trying to meet them in the least restrictive environment. And before we go through and identify a student, our staff is also excellent about making sure that the proper interventions have been put in place. Because when you do go and identify a student with special needs, that's already been labeled that you are putting on a child. Generally, for the rest, we want to make sure they have the support, but we also want to make sure that we've tried everything possible before we go and identify them as a child with special needs. And we use a variety of data and assessments. Our team is excellent at doing that. So right now, as of today, we are at 17%. We usually are equal with the state. I don't have the state percentage as of now. I don't know if the state even has their percentage.
They're behind on everything.
Generally they are, but usually, we always set the bar at 15%. That's because we were trying to stay with the state or below. They always ran higher than us. So I'm guessing we're probably right on target. We're probably even or below. So if you have any questions?
And that's, Nancy, on this page, what you're saying,
Yes.
column I is the one I think.
This, yes,
the
I
speech
is.
and language that you're talking about.
Yes, the pages after that identify the letters with the disability, and you can see the breakdown district-wide at this point in time. And we will have some meetings the rest of this week, so we might even have a few exits, and we might have a few more eligibilities, but overall, this will be it. But yes, if you'll look at I, that is the speech and language
And
only.
I think that last page, if I'm not mistaken,
That-
2052 is where we were sitting at the end of August, I think. We haven't gained or lost anybody, and we usually gain a few after Labor Day.
Yes, generally they come in after Labor Day.
You
And-
guys, I'm not sure if that's, I think it was at 2052.
Mrs. Collin ran this report for me
She ran
on,
it today, it looks like.
yes.
But the one we got at the end of August, I'm pretty sure was 2052 as well. I have to look to be sure.
So we're doing good there. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Linda, would you care if we suspend the meeting for a second before we go
Okay.
into yours and do the budget hearing real quick?
I haven't heard from Debbie, I was just gonna make it a note.
Okay, is that all right with you?
That'd be fine,
Okay, 'cause
yes.
we're running a little bit behind, we're supposed to have that at 7.
Okay, I want to entertain a motion to suspend the regular board meeting to begin the budget hearing. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger? Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Ms. Larison?
Yes.
Ms. Rushing? Mr. Summer?
Yes.
Ms. Steele?
Yes.
Mr. Souders?
Yes. Now call for the 2017-2018 budget hearing to order.
You gotta do another roll call.
Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Ms. Larison?
Here.
Ms. Rushing? Mr. Summer?
Here.
Ms. Steele? Mr. Souders?
Here, yes. All right, we'll please refer to the proposed 2017-2018 budget.
Yeah, everybody should have a copy of that. If you have any questions specifically, I've got a couple of notes on the overhead. Basically, the budget for now, as you know, is a guess. It's basically our best guess, right? Based on her worksheets and everything she does, and there's a lot that goes into it on her end, and then what we sit down and figured up, basically what we're trying to do this year. So some of it may not come to fruition if we don't watch our spending. Like, we had to guess how much we're gonna spend, and we had to knock some things down on like operation, maintenance, supplies and stuff like that we're trying to save. We don't know if we're gonna be able to save those yet. It depends on how the rest of the year goes. But right now, on that second page there, The first one with columns, it's showing a surplus. It's a little high right now, and we know there's some expenses not in there, but it's showing 671,000 to the good, basically, what it's showing right now. And then also, if you look at working cash, it's showing 60 whatever thousand, which is basically what we get in the property levy this year, right? Because we abolished the working cash last year to pay bills. So that being said, it's definitely positive, and if you, on that first page, you'll notice, it doesn't require a deficit reduction plan right now, right? The thing is, I'd like to keep everything, all this with a grain of salt if you look at it. I ran this through, Deb and I worked very closely together with this forecasting software, which does it a little differently. She has worksheets and things that it uses based on previous years and all kinds of stuff that I can't even comprehend yet. But on this one uses projections based on patterns. And the one thing I wanted to point out here is that the initial working fund is showing also a surplus of 472,000, which is a little bit less than what is on the budget from what we worked up. But if you really go down to the all funding accounts, and it uses our past history, like borrowing $800,000 from our working cash to make bills and stuff, and it's only showing about a $60,000 surplus. But still, it's showing a surplus right now, projecting that. So that's after we took basically all the adjustments we could make. And again, this is a forecast software, and a forecast is only as good as the inputs you put into it. So we'll have to see, but between the two of us, we're still showing that we're going to be close, basically. Now you got to understand too, all of this is without any kind of a raise or anything figured in for salaries, because we have not negotiated yet for that. This is all based on keeping everything where it's at. We did include the benefit reduction that we've saved from switching in health insurance, which was overall right around 17%, I think, something like that. So that was quite a savings. And then Deb moved over a bunch of salaries to Title I, which was a savings from our general aid fund, which I think helped. She also moved over a teacher to the Title II, which helped, and we didn't get penalized this year. They used to penalize the heck out of us for TRS for using federal funds. But I think it's definitely a positive at this point. We just have to see, at the end of the day, how much are we going to end up spending, and that's going to determine what this looks like again. So,
Any of the, when we think we may get a little extra, from the state, was
that could impact this.
That wasn't figured in,
yeah.
that wasn't.
No, it's not figured in
that.
either one of us. And I
is.
think both, the question marks are, basically, we kept most things flat, right, Deb? We didn't increase a lot of things, and we increased them minimally. We did not increase our revenue. We kept the state aid as last year, correct?
Different like that.
And we figured, we're crossing our fingers, and we're figuring on 4 categorical payments. We only got 2 last year during the fiscal year, and then they sent another one. Yeah, and they still owe us one from last year. So, it's hard to say whether we're going to get those. Those are the question marks, but that's what's figured in there. So if we don't get all 4 of those categoricals, obviously that'll change. And then depending on what they do with the formula, we don't know. Right now, they're just giving us what they gave us last year. But anyway, that's kind of the initial draft of the budget. We're going to probably be amending this much more than normal this year because of all the uncertainty from the state. And we'll have to go back and look at this again when we figure out what they're really going to pay us and stuff like that.
I'm very pleased that we don't have to do the deficit reduction thing.
I looked that up because I didn't really understand what makes that and what doesn't. And basically, this is what I found. So basically, if you're running a deficit budget, you have to have 3 times whatever your deficit is left in your working funds. So if you're running, say we're going to run $1 million deficit, we're projecting to overspend by $1 million, you have to have $3 million left over in all your working funds to not have to do a deficit reduction. So that's why we had to do one last year, right?
Well, we overspent last year. I mean, we had
And the other
it.
thing is, remember, we're waiting for the AFR. We might still have to do a deficit reduction plan.
That's true, yeah.
We don't know
What
what the
did you say,
AFR
David?
We don't know what the AFR is gonna tell us.
Okay.
Because right now, we're fine. The budget isn't. But if our AFR comes in and they say we have to do a deficit reduction plan, we'll have to do it. I guess we amend then. I
Yeah.
mean, not
Probably
very sure
amend it.
how that works.
And it's very likely we might
I
have to based
think
on.
there's a possibility we're going to.
Based
So
on.
what was that thing that we had to do last year that was an additional attachment? Was that the deficit?
That was the
It's deficit
Okay.
reduction plan, yeah. In fact, it's probably in the very back of that. Unless he took them out, I don't know.
I took the blank
Did you
pages
take
out.
them?
Yeah.
Well,
There's
that's
nothing
not
there
right.
now. But I would say it's very likely we'll have to do one based
I'm
on
almost
our.
positive, but who knows?
But it won't be the 1.8 million like we should have had last year, or whatever it was. You think
It's
it
hard
won't
to
be?
say.
I've never done this before with the AFR saying one thing and the budget saying another.
Okay.
So we'll just have to see how that brings it up. It shouldn't be that much, I think.
The AFR will be here next month, probably.
It should be. They're just waiting on that last letter from the state, and then it's all done, finished and
Coming
done.
to present it
Okay.
to. As long as it all comes in. Does anybody have any questions for Debbie about the budget?
Okay, let's go backwards. You said working cash. So the bonds that we sold back to ourselves, hate to keep bringing these up. Would that have been a part of our working cash?
No, working cash is another fund. It had 800,000 in it, and we do that to make payrolls.
Okay, so if at some point we get all that money back, then where does that go?
But we'll take about 15 years to get that 800,000
Yeah,
back.
no, she's talking about the bond, right?
The bond.
The
The
bonds.
bonds.
Yeah.
Oh, the bonds?
That would just be,
2020?
that would be, see,
Let's hope we don't have to borrow those.
the problem with the bonds is if we get rid of them before we pay them off, we don't really benefit from
Right,
doing
No,
it.
it was,
Right.
it
We're
was a
trying
waste
not
of
to do
time.
that.
We're trying not to do that.
But the working cash, when you do a property tax levy, there's a small portion of it's about 50,000-60,000 a
Oh,
year.
that's right.
Goes in
Goes
there.
straight into working cash. And so over 20 years or something, it was built up to $800,000. And the reason that's important is if we have a boiler go out
Sure,
at Jefferson,
sure.
we've
Yeah.
got money sitting there that we can pay for it, you know, and now we don't have that.
The next question will be if they don't come to us some more money from the state here, which they're doing okay right now. And we're sliding by every payroll and board bill. Taxes should be, property taxes should be, what, probably in November, we'll probably get some money in November and probably January. Unless we can make borrow and steal from those people, and they're pretty good about that. I'd almost, instead of reselling the bond that I'd almost wanna go and just do tax anticipation.
Yeah, I think everybody
Because
has
it's gonna
to
still
do
be, it might be less, at least we'll have the interest from the 2 million that we purchased, and we'll just be paying 4% on
And
the, we can do that a million at a time.
And that's a good point. Right now, we're still living paycheck to paycheck.
Mhm.
None of the surplus or anything, if that all worked out, none of that would be there until the end of the year. If we're just,
Right.
because normally we would have property tax money by now. You know, and the bills just went out today. So
It's gotta make it to the end of the year.
it'd be nice if we can get there, but you have, that, Debbie, that tax anticipation, all that's good to go for how long?
It's, you know, I don't,
'Cause I'm
I
sure
guess for
there's
the, I'm assuming for the whole school year.
I was wondering about that.
Well, wait a minute, we might have to do that other type of bond then. Because that's on our taxes that we're anticipating.
One that's gonna be coming in.
You know, we probably would have to maybe January, because they said October and December were gonna be the payments.
Something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it'll be January when we get that last one. We might have to do something else, those might not be, I mean, you could,
We better check on that. 'Cause
Hopefully we won't have no emergencies.
the board voted that in way back before July 1.
yes, we just made it like about $100,000 that one payroll.
Well, encourage everybody to pay their taxes this year so that they can claim them on their taxes for 2017.
That's true.
That's right, because you only get to claim what you actually pay, not what you were supposed to
Yeah, for your taxes.
for your property.
Yeah.
For Illinois especially, so
It's a spit.
we had that happen a couple of years ago. People would, had forgotten that they had to pay their full tax.
Anybody else have any questions about the budget?
What is it? Well, How many did we gotta get? 3?
So we'll now open the meeting up for the public testimony. So does the public have any kind of question or something they need? I'll now entertain a motion to adopt the 2017-2018 budget as presented. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this budget? No discussion? Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele.
Yes.
Mr. Souders.
Yes. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn the budget hearing. We have a first, second.
Second.
Any discussion? Lisa, roll call, please.
Mr. Berger.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
We just have 3, don't we? Do I have any? We got 3 of them around here?
Ms. Larison.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing.
Yes.
Mr. Summer.
Yes.
Ms. Steele. Mr. Souders.
Yes. We're now going to go back to our regular meeting.
And,
One of those, Grace.
you wanna go ahead and talk to them about the pre-K without David?
I can do it, yes.
Okay.
Debbie Christensen and I have a very strong philosophy that pre-K makes a big difference in children and their success in school as they go. And we have been calling the state since January, hoping there would be a grant that we could write for the half-day preschool. We are both on a first-name basis with Jim and Metcalf, and I almost can hear a sign or voice when we call. The half-day pre-K, there was no grant left for that this year. But there was a grant left called Preschool for All Extension. And we wrote for the extension. Now, the extension's different than the half-day because the extension has to be a full day preschool. It can't be a half-day. We think that will answer the issue for some families in our district, families who have 2 working parents that can arrange to take their child and then be there at noon to pick them up again. And we think that it will provide services for maybe the most needy in our district. And so with that in mind, we have written a grant. Our program we call the Learning Express. We have written for 2 full days preschools, one to be housed at MES and one to be housed at Brookwood, because those are the 2 schools in our district with the highest free and reduced lunch. I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the program, which was not really my part. In the program, we will utilize creative curriculum development, which is a program recommended by the state. We will also use Second Step, which is something that we already have. In the program, we will use Parenting Now, which is also recommended by the state. Now, the part I was to talk about, I am ready to do, I know the most about. In the grant, we wrote for 2 full-time teachers. They must have a professional educational license with an early childhood endorsement. Then we wrote for 2 paraprofessionals, 1 teacher for each school, 1 aide or paraprofessional for each school. And then we wrote for a combination instructional leader, parent educator. That was a big item in this grant, is that you have an instructional leader who sees that both programs are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And parent education is a really, really big component in this. So if we had any hope of getting it, we had to include that. We felt like with only 2 sections that could be put into 1 person, either 1 person or 2 half times, depending on how things worked out as far as applications go. We put down for 2 clerical staff, and the reason for that was we will have to be able to satisfy the lunches and planning and the paraprofessionals' breaks according to the contract. There had to be a way for 2 people have to be in the room all the time. And if it's instructional time, then the teacher has to be there. If it's non-instructional time, then the clerical aide could come in with the paraprofessional, and they could, like if it's nap time or something like that. So that seemed to be the most cost-effective way to cover those lunches and breaks and planning. Let's see. We wrote in for 2 professional days for each of the people that we hired. And we talked to Jason, Mr. Hayes, and he said that the district would pay the sick days, but he was sure all of them would take their professional days, and so we wrote in for 2 personal days for each of the people that we hire, because he says they always take those. We also wrote in for 2 evaluators for the end of the year, and Debbie and I would like to be those 2 evaluators if the board is open to that. We would like to see that the evaluation is written correctly and is turned in a timely manner so that we do not endanger our chances of getting other grants. Because it is my understanding, but I've said this before and it didn't work out, it's my understanding that soon after the first of the year, we will be able to write for those half-day preschools again. And we've been told that several times, but we were also told last year in January that it would be available and we could write it, and it never happened. So,
Ms. Grace,
Uh-huh.
if we got the full day, would you go back to half day, or would that just be an extra?
well, it's something we would have to look at, but I think depending on how the full day works out, you might do well to do both, to have one full day and then also the
And they are
half day.
completely separate, so I think so.
They're
So you
2
could
separate.
have both, you could have both?
Yes,
Okay.
there are 2 separate grants. In the grant, I wrote for the curriculum that we are supposed to use, creative curriculum, which is about $6,200. I wrote for what they call creative curriculum goal, which is about $1,348. And I wrote for a lot of math manipulatives. I wrote for 2 sets of 5 tricycles each. When when we left the Head Start building, the tricycles belong to them, so we have nothing like that outside. So that was one thing that when we talked to the pre-K teachers last spring, that they asked us to write for. So I thought that was a chance. I thought this was a good chance to get as much as we could to use in future programs if we do get other grants. I wrote for playground balls, parachutes, 2 parachutes, 2 of those big parachutes. I wrote for 2 sets of literacy supplies, that would be books, puzzles, that kind of things for centers. CD players, 2 CDs to go with them. 2 sets of art supplies, 2 easels, 2 tubs for storage, 2 kitchen centers, 2 workbenches with tools, that Parenting Now curriculum, which is a $600 item, we can use for parent education. We wrote for substitutes, as I said. We wrote for 9 field trips, and I talked to the bus service, and that's about $86.42 would be a minimum trip. I think that's a 3-hour trip, no more than 25 miles, which would probably be most any field trip that we would take. We wrote for admission for 40 students on 3 field trips at $5 a student. That might give us an opportunity to take them to the Carson Center to one of those productions, which is great, or to the Maritime Museum or something like that. We also wrote for 40 meals for 2 field trips so we could buy their meal if we went somewhere. We wrote it for snacks. Snacks are not reimbursable from the state. We can either be reimbursed for their breakfast and lunch, or we could be reimbursed for the snack after school. Well, it's not after school, so we wrote in money for the snack, which ended up being about $5,600. And that's pretty much what we wrote for. The total amount that we wrote for, and I hit this really quickly because I know that the total amount we wrote for was $328,015.
But is this a grant that's upcoming for next school year,
No.
January?
No, we should know, we are hoping to know within, well, it was due the 15th. They have 60 days to have readers read and evaluate them and determine who's going to get the money. So we are hoping that we will know before Christmas, and that we could, if we are fortunate enough to get the grant, that we could have our program going right after Christmas break.
Is this a one-year grant?
One year.
So would it go January to December, or just
It'll go January to June.
Oh, okay.
So there's no next, once you get it, this is not a reapply for next year, it's a one-shot deal.
We'll get it for the rest of this year.
Yeah.
Then we can write for next year.
Okay.
Again.
You can continue to apply. So your chances, if you were granted it once, you would think that.
If we do our evaluation right, our chances of getting it again would be great.
Okay, that's what.
And it will accommodate, it is for 40 slots at Brookport, 20 at Brookport and 20 at.
40
at-
students. So
40 students total.
One classroom,
Yes.
one classroom at Brookport, one
Yes.
classroom at MES.
Yes.
We have those available.
We have the classrooms.
Yes.
I know you checked all the available kids and everything like that, I know you got all this down to that. Just for curiosity, what percentage chance you think we got, where we at,
Good.
if you just had to take a gut feeling, where you think we're at?
Do you know how much has
Fours
been
are-
budgeted for this grant?
As far as our
Right.
needs and stuff.
From the state budget, how much?
I prayed before I turned in any grant, and I prayed before I turned in this grant. And I have a very good feeling about it. And Debbie and I both noticed that when we talked to Jenna Metcalf, she said, when you get the grant. So
Be good.
we are feeling good about it. You know, feeling good and having the money is two different things. We will not get the whole 300-something thousand because they will probably cut that in half. Or I don't say half. I'm gonna say they won't cut it in half because they will give us, I wrote for us to get 52,000 the very first month, so that we could buy our supplies. But then they would probably cut down,
Correct.
it would be half of the teacher's salaries,
Salaries.
half of the salaries, half of the field trips and like that.
So you're anticipating if we could get this, just continue writing this one plus trying for more?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if you were writing this for a full year, you would have asked for over 600?
No, I wrote it for a year.
No, if you could have written it for a full year.
This was for.
She
this-
did write
It wasn't.
I wrote it for a full year.
Yeah, this is what it costs for, they'll prorate for a half year if they start.
And they will
Okay,
determine
this is
what
all
of
we-
that
Right.
full
Gotcha
year
now.
they
Gotcha.
will give us.
Okay, gotcha.
The problem is they didn't release it in time, so
Right, right.
she couldn't write for it
Right.
and submit it until now, which is good.
Okay.
Is there probably 40 students would be on a waiting list that could be served? I mean,
This is
anyone
the
look
order
at
that you take them. You take 4-year-olds according to highest need. Then you can take 3-year-olds beginning with highest need. And the need has to have been established by Child Find when Head Start did screenings. And those will be people that did not qualify for Head Start based on their,
So,
So you have to
Speech.
re-screen again,
Speech or something like
Linda,
that.
Ms. Grace?
we can take those screenings for children that had them
Yeah.
last year, but if there are children that did not have those screenings, then we will have to screen. And we have written into the grant that screening will be ongoing and will, I mean, if some new child comes in and there's an opening and they want to be screened, we'll do it. We wrote that it would be
so
ongoing.
if there's only, will we have will we get will we still get that full amount, say if there's only 12 kids at Brookport and 15 at MES, we won't get a reduction based on number of students?
No, because they won't know the number of students you're going to have until they give you the money.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be 20.
Well, you would hope it would, yeah.
I just want to tell you and Ms. Christian thanks.
Middle of the year.
Well, I know
this has been a hard work.
It's something near and dear to our hearts, and we both feel very strongly
Oh,
about
we
it.
all feel.
Think about being
strong.
full.
And we are hoping
full
this
day will help.
happens.
Oh, I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Full day definitely helps.
Yeah, we got the class for that.
Like I say, full day would definitely help.
I tell you what, I got to see most of the grants.
Thank you, Linda.
Because
Thank you.
I had to input
Thank you.
into the application, and they did a ton of work.
Oh, I know.
It's longer than the title grant. It's ridiculous how
I'm sure it is.
Mr. Hayes was good enough to put it into the computer for us. We typed it out and brought it on sticks, and he was good enough to type it in for us.
Is this, how long has this grant been going out to schools, or is this kind of a new grant? Has this been out for a
The
while?
expansion grant has been there, I don't know how long. A lot of schools don't write for it because they already have half-day
Half-day
programs.
programs.
But this was our only option, so we wrote for it. And I do think there are people in our community that really do need the full day because of
Well,
the
I
work
hear you.
schedules and,
Make it much handier
A
on,
lot in here.
a lot handier to try to get somebody there to pick up.
and as Debbie said, what time they come pick up their child is really out of our control. So if there's someone who thinks that 1 o'clock is late enough for their child to stay, we certainly can't say, no, they can't go. So,
Well, regardless of getting or not, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
thank,
Would
We are glad
this
to
be,
do
how
it.
many days, what'd you say, how many days a week would they?
5 days.
Oh, it would be five.
It's 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
And the grant requires that you keep the same hours as first grade.
Okay.
There are certain stipulations the grant makes and you have no control over.
Right, right.
Few more sessions.
Oh, yeah, there's a nap. There's a rest time, quite a long rest time. It even tells you like how many hours there should be of choice time where they can go to centers and do things. How much time should be spent in physical, gross motor. There's a suggestion of those times, and your chance of getting it again would be dependent upon your doing what they think is best.
We need to go move into the consent approval of the minutes, the bills, and the treasurer's report. Has everybody had a chance to look at those and go over them?
I have a question.
Yes.
This trainer, this $19,000 trainer, is that for the year?
Yes, it is.
And what does this person do?
She attends all the football games, most of the practices, all the basketball games for varsity. It's to help with our livelihood. We used to always have ambulance services there and everything, and nowadays, this is all we have.
Well, Randy told me that nobody called about all.
A lot of that out of a lot of the process. The other thing that we offered this summer, myself and Melissa Thomason, third grade teacher at Jefferson, we did our first ever online professional development sessions for PD clock hours for teachers. My session had about 35 people in it, and Ms. Thomason's had about 25 people in it. So we were able to, do some things there and actually provide free online PD, which is, kind of a new thing for us anyway. But it went really well. We got a lot of positive feedback. And for the next one, I've kind of coerced Mr. Hayes into kind of co-instructing it with me. So we're going to keep doing that. It's just something that we're going to try to do to offer those free sessions for professional development. Yeah.
Online thing too, I know Bobette knows this, but the secretaries, when they had all the paper forms before, they had to input those as time permitted, so usually we didn't get those updated. I don't know about the other schools. At the high school, it was usually February before we got all those entered and updated and numbers corrected and everything, so I
Yeah.
think that's really.
It's really helpful. I usually do it at home.
Yeah, as Veronica said, it worked well. The synchronization part, I basically sat at home one night and knocked it out in like 2 hours, where that would have been nothing but form entry, data entry, so it went really well.
As a mother of 4 children, it was like rock star signing the kids up for school.
Awesome.
It like took 10 minutes where, usually it's like a 45-minute process.
And
To
we're-
fill out all those papers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard a lot of positive comments.
I did.
Yeah, Yeah, like anything else, I heard some negative stuff too, but I think that goes with any news. This was a brand new thing for us. So, you know, but we heard a lot more positive than we did negative, and I was happy with it. There was a lot of work that went into it, but at the end result, I think was really good, really positive. So.
Is this something most school districts are going to?
Yes. Yeah. I know McCracken's been this way for at least the last 2, possibly 3 school years. You know, and it's just I know other Illinois schools have done it, so it's getting there.
The figures, Marion.
Yeah. Yeah. I know Marion rolled it in the 16-17 school year. So yeah, it's within the last 2 or 3 years. Other places are really starting to jump on. The other thing that we did was we moved all of our text communications over to a service called Remind. Some of you as parents may know it as Remind 101. A lot of our teachers have utilized this over the years, whether they're teacher or coach, to send out informational pieces about, hey, game's canceled, don't forget the spelling test, things like that. We got the district level Remind console for other, school level messages, so we can send out school related things, not just from the classroom, now school and also from the districts. The big piece as to why we did it, though, you'll notice in the first bullet point, is ESSA compliance. Mr. Hayes, do you have
Yeah, part of our title is now, it's all ESSA instead of No Child Left Behind, and part of the big shift there is the communication. It says meaningful communication with parents, I think.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Deb and I have to look at for that grant that we get now for Title I, because we have to provide documentation of that meaningful communication. And he has a chart that kind of separates some of that out.
Yeah, so the chart up there, this was for the month of August, and the lighter blue is just announcements, one-way announcements, spelling tests, things like that. But that darker blue is that two-way communication. So an announcement may have been sent, but then a parent responded, and it started a chain of communication. And that's what the ESSA compliance is all about. It's having that meaningful two-way communication with teachers, back to parents.
And to be honest, nowadays, calling a parent is not as easy as the numbers change so often. And then we've also tried to collect emails. But the nice thing about the Remind is the parents sign up themselves.
Yeah.
So, and it's through their cell phone and text messages, and almost everyone has that.
And I've heard positive things about that too.
Yeah, the communication is amazing that they can do. And all the principals are using this now to send out Remind messages and things, and a lot of the teachers are, and I think more and more will as time goes on.
And that was another thing that we rolled out this summer. Again, something that we've been doing at the classroom level, but I'd worked with the people behind the scenes with Remind to get this to our district. So last year I touched on how many, about this time last year, how many Chromebooks and boxes and bases have been deployed across the district. We were about 800 September 2016. We're now about 1,200, and we still have some more to distribute. It's growing, more and more. We had gotten our first Chromebooks in 2012, and I think we had 5 pieces at about this time 5 years ago, and now we're at 1,200.
Okay, so we're 1 to 0.5.
Yeah. So we're getting there. It's
What's it gonna take?
Another 1,000 will be number 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And what would it cost?
I mean, right now the ones we've been deploying to students are about $200 a piece, give or take. So, it just would really depend on the trick for us would be what grade levels do you do that at? Because you don't necessarily do that with a kindergarten or first grader.
Right.
Maybe 3rd and above has always been my thought process on that. And then to have more kind of tablet type devices like an iPad for the younger grades, because that seems to be the best solution that people are kind of coming up with now. But
I was just I've been thinking a little bit about trying to reach out to some of the employers that I know in Essex County and seeing if there's any way to find out what.
yeah, I mean, we can get you some numbers on what we have and what's in different schools. This was a little tricky because we deployed more in the 3 original Title I buildings first, because that's where the money came from. Now that we have the other buildings as Title I, we're getting more there, but a lot of the stuff that we purchased was previous to that, so you know.
I think if you can give the board members, especially, what do you need, the total amount, then all of us here could reach out to some of the people that we know in town, and maybe between all of us, enough is.
Yeah, there's gotta be somebody willing out there, you know, I would think, but,
Yeah.
you know, you never
Just
know.
gotta know the right person.
Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Never know.
But the good thing is, again, this has been one of those amazing things for us in the sense of management. When Mr. Hayes was, you know, technology coordinator, we would have to go back then to machine to install anything. And now it takes a click of a button and we can install something to 1,200 machines like that. You know, so.
Do they take any of those on?
Only in very select cases right now, and that's gonna be at the junior high. And-
I brought that up only because I was on the housing board for a long time, and sometimes there's money available. I didn't know about the housing residents, if they would be able to come up with some money somehow or another to, and, you know, I'm throwing things.
Right,
out there.
right.
They probably, for this sake, have to be quiet.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It doesn't hurt, that- it doesn't
Anyway,
hurt.
I mean,
that.
they're federally funded, and they have a certain part of their money has to be spent on something for kids every year.
Right.
And, you know, it's kind of hard to try to get them into any after-school programs in the summer or food programs. We tried all that. So now they go down to swim.
Right.
That's about the only thing they're really interested in, so.
But yeah, no, it doesn't hurt to ask them because we always try to look around too and see, you know, what we can deploy more and
Yeah.
except, I think this leads into, yeah. One of the things this kind of leads into that, talking about how we do have a few students that take them home from junior highs. We have 4 teachers right now that are piloting complete online learning through the use of Chromebooks. And what I mean by that is they have classroom sets and they're doing everything through their laptops. So that's a first for us. We have 4 teachers there in the 8th grade that are piloting that. And I've very minimal negative things. It's been nothing but positive things. Got a really nice email the other day from one of the teachers doing it, which is really rare for me to get a nice email. So, but he had nothing but positive things to say about it, and it was going really well. And I think here within the next few months we might have.
Yeah, maybe next board meeting, we might have Travis Felker, he's one of them, come and kind of give us an update, maybe one of the other teachers. It's really, you should see the work they're doing.
It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. And they could speak on that way better than I can. I was just the setup on that. So now kind of getting to the nitty gritty dirty part. This is what Mr. Hayes initially approached me about for me to talk about. But I was like, I can't just all talk about state reports. I gotta talk about some good stuff. ISB requirements have grown a lot. When I first started, I basically had 2 or 3 reports that I was doing, and now I do like 20. And these reports are not small. One of them here, for example, I have listed is called Student Course Assignment, and basically it's transcript information. And just for high school alone in a semester, it's over 4,000 rows of spreadsheet. And it's just this giant thing that you got to kind of manipulate and play with to make sure it's right. Because these state systems link together, and there's systems that link together with things that Devin McCabe and I do. Basically, their teacher ID within Iowa's, you know, the Illinois state system, will be linked to not only what school they're working at, what classes they're teaching, how much money they're making, you know, their evaluations. It's this crazy thing that's all coming together now, and it's just getting more and more and more. And one of the things that really we looked at that kind of, you know, scared us, if you will, or at least scared me, was that when I went to go do a student exit this year, I noticed that they added 3 different fields, and I put this screenshot up there on purpose, is because now that anytime we have a student that leaves the district, or even is transient between our own buildings, they go from Unity to Brookport, wherever, on that student we have to report days present, excused absences, unexcused absences. I used to not have to do that part of it before. It used to be kind of with other things, but it kind of is concerning because looking at some of the other optional things that come on my reports, they even have it drilled down to attendance per class, per kid. It's just gonna get bigger and more and more and more. I find myself, and I've always said it, to people I talk to, and I've told Mr. Hayes this more than once, that's basically about a quarter of my job anymore, it seems like, is just dealing with state reports. You know, and it's just getting more and more, so.
Yeah, and like you said, I know, Debbie, you've got 2 or 3 new ones this year. And we found out the report, you had to turn in their evaluation scores, and now they're tracking teacher attendance as well. And that's gonna be on the Illinois School Report Card. So more and more, I mean, they're pulling more and more data. The problem is, every school district in Illinois uses some sort of different data management system. And that's essentially the problem. If we were in Kentucky, this wouldn't be a big deal,
No.
because they all use the same thing.
Yeah, if we were in Kentucky, I would wouldn't even talking about this at all.
He has to translate those reports into some sort of spreadsheet to upload them to the state system, and everyone's system is different, so.
Is there more schools using the same type of system that we're doing?
It's all over the place.
Is it?
Does it link, now did I miss you say that? Does it link the student, they teach it? And their grades and their progression?
As long as that information is correct from whenever I see it, and that goes, that's all
Okay,
linked up.
so if a child is falling behind, it knows.
You can go in there, if you click in enough, you can see, you know, what grade, and for us, you know, especially those, like the counts, there's only 1 teacher per grade, so it's easy to see, you know, who's doing what. You have all those classes, they have a course ID that's local, that attaches itself to the kids and to the teachers. So it's, you know, there's a lot there. It really is.
The new funding model, I think you're gonna see more and more of that.
Yeah, and that's what, the thing that, you know, I kind of opened this slide up with, it kind of scared me, concerned me, if you will. And I went right to Mr. Hayes about it, was because of that exact reason. I saw this right after they announced evidence-based funding. I was like, does that mean that this is all gonna pull from that? Because that's,
Keyword is evidence.
yeah, exactly. So, I'll move along from that. Last thing I'll kind of talk about real quick, until I move to Mr. Frazier here. I kind of just quickly looked up just historical E-rate reimbursements since I've been here and started doing it. And you notice from about 08 up to 13, it was pretty static, and then we had some goofiness with 14 and up, with, you know, kind of extremes there. But for the most part, if you took the last 10 years out and divided it out, it's roughly the same. And this is the money that comes back from our connections and telephone services. So whenever we write up, in the years past, it would have been, you know, whoever were our providers, you know, down to Frontier with phones. We would write up, you know, and through a series of reports and forms to get money back based on free reduced lunch rate, you know, and they would give us a basically a number that we would get back. So right now we're at 80%. So whatever we pay in, we should roughly get back about 80%. But it is always a year later. That's how E-rates always worked.
Telecommunication.
And you pay it up front and then you'll get it back a year later, so.
And this is all that money that they collect on those hidden fees that they're always talking about on cell phones, right?
Yep.
Those federal
Little
taxes on
FCC
cell
fees
phones.
and stuff, that basically goes to schools and libraries. Probably not all of it, but some of it. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I'm going to switch to Mr. Frazier.
Tom asked me to come in and touch base with you guys on the website updates that we're doing. Google has now come out with a new Google site. Some of you guys might have seen that. I know I've used it for the soccer pages, and some of the other coaches have used it to transition their team pages over to it. And until recently, we weren't able to transition the bigger websites, our domains over to that, and they've allowed us to do that now. I have the high school site, I'd say 98% done. The only thing that's lacking is a couple schedule changes on some of the teacher pages. So we're ready to roll that out. The main reason we have to do that is Google is transitioning from the old style to the new style. They're going to quit supporting it. They're going to remove it, to my knowledge. So we're going to have to do this. I've started working on the junior high site too. So you're going to see a new look. One of the big features is everybody's got a cell phone. Parents got a cell phone. A lot of time, I mean, I'm out on the soccer field and football field and doing all this stuff. I check all kinds of stuff on my phone. This is way easier to view on a cell phone. It's so much easier to view on a cell phone. It's a lot easier for us to manage and maintain. I put together the high school site, and I mimicked basically what we had on the original site, made some updates, put the new school calendar, you know, things like that on there, and I did it on and off for a week, and I had it done. And that wasn't every day just working on it. It was in between us, you know, dealing with trouble tickets and other issues that we had. So it's really easy for us to throw something together like that, and then once we have it done, it's even easier just go in there and change it real quick. And I think within the last week, they wouldn't allow you to do embedding with Facebook, and I think they're going to add Twitter. They haven't yet, but Tom brought it to my attention that they have allowed Facebook live feeds now. So whereas before my template on the new site, it just had a link to our Facebook page or our Facebook feed and the Twitter feed. Now I can go in there and change that Facebook feed into a live feed on the site like the old one did, and we're hoping that they move into the Twitter one, you know, pretty quickly on that too. But I think that's about all I had. Any
Yeah, I
questions
know.
on that, or-
They look really good,
Yeah.
and I think it's gonna be until just look and feel of the new site.
I mean, like I said, it's easy to maintain, and there's some really neat stuff you can do with it. You can add a lot of banners and background images that watermark, and like that picture there is actually what you see when you go to the main site now. See a nice picture of the high school. I've got the same thing with the junior high. You log on there, it's a nice pretty picture of the junior high, and then you have your announcements and everything, and then you have all your links, and I try and make it as clean as possible for, you know, parents and everyone to, because I know not everybody's, you know, technology inclined, and you know, you just want to get on there and look and see what time your kid has to be, you know, at a certain practice or at a game or something like that. So we want to keep that in mind and, you know, make it easy for everyone to use in the district and community. So,
And then lastly, we'll kind of quick touch base on some future plans. We've been doing some coding and programming at our K-6 levels. We're going to try to roll that down. Basically try to hit maybe grades 1 and 2, but 3 and above at this point. And try to look at utilizing some E-rate funding to upgrade some power and battery backups on our equipment. We've realized that that's now pretty much the biggest hurdle for, you know, power goes out, we can sustain for about an hour for our main feed, and then it goes out. So.
And now it kills the internet for the whole district.
Yeah,
It goes out to high school.
it goes out to high school. So we got a battery that lasts for right about an hour, but that's.
And it's gone out, what, 6 times the past 2 months?
Yeah, it seems like about that.
we got one good test in.
Yeah. We're going to do more online professional development. As I mentioned.
Yeah, we can talk about that, yeah. He was just talking about generators for your equipment.
Oh, yeah.
A little bitty one would
Yeah.
do that, it's just a matter of.
Yeah, and the main things do have their own lines from, like Clearwave has their own batteries on it, but we actually have a piece that needs a battery on it too. So the more online professional development, touched on that earlier. Like I said, the next thing that we intend on rolling out is something that Mr. Hayes and myself will be doing. Donations, State Farm, Mr. Fraser reached out to them. State Farm will let you get up to 25 computers, laptops or desktops per year, and used to have to drive to Bloomington to get them, and now we'll send them to you.
That's great.
So that was a free deal. He put that all together. So
We have 20 laptops and 10 desktops.